Hello! If you'd told me a year ago that I'd end up living with my best friend's older brother, I would have laughed you out of the room. Jason was the guy we all wanted to be, or, if we're being honest, the guy most of us secretly wanted to be with. But he was straight. Very straight. The kind of straight that wore flannel, chopped wood for fun, and used the word bro unironically. And now, at 27, he was also recently divorced and crashing in my apartment for a few weeks. A few weeks became 2 months. Let me back up. I've been best friends with Matt, Jason's younger brother, since high school. We met in detention freshman year for skipping gym, bonded over a shared hatred for burpees. Stayed tight through everything. Bad relationships, cringy college phases, even a failed attempt to start a podcast together. I knew everything about Matt. But Jason? He was always more of a background presence. The guy who'd swing by family dinners when I was over, who'd say things like, "Still kicking ass at school, kid," and ruffle my hair like I was 12. I'd had a tiny, harmless crush on him when I was younger. Not that I ever did anything about it. Jason got married straight out of college to some Instagram influencer, who eventually cheated on him with a guy named Chase. Which, if your name is Chase, I'm sorry, but you probably own white loafers and say things like, "Let's circle back." Anyway, after the divorce, Matt mentioned his brother was going through it, lost his house in the split, needed a temporary place. I had a second bedroom and a rent that was one parking ticket away from breaking me. The math checked out. Just a few weeks, Matt had said. Jason showed up with 2 duffel bags and a guitar. "Thanks, man," he said, clapping me on the shoulder. "You're saving my ass." That first week, we barely saw each other. He had job interviews. I worked remote. We coexisted like civilized roommates, left each other notes about groceries, shared takeout, occasionally passed each other shirtless in the hallway. That part was more of a me problem. Jason walked around like the air belonged to him, casually hot in the way only guys who've never needed dating apps can be. The trouble started the night my ex texted me. It was one of those just checking in texts, the kind that pretends to be innocent, but is really just them trying to see if they still have access to your brain. I stared at it for a full hour, trying not to spiral. Jason came in while I was nursing a beer on the couch. "You good?" he asked, grabbing a soda from the fridge. I shrugged. "Yeah. Just X stuff." He nodded slowly, like he got it. "You want to talk about it?" "Not really." Jason sat down next to me anyway, not across from me, right next to me. His thigh brushed mine. Maybe he didn't notice, or maybe he didn't care. Either way, I was hyper aware of it. "That bad, huh?" he asked, cracking open the can. I laughed dryly. "Just the usual. They always want to reconnect once you're finally okay." He looked at me for a second, quiet. "I get that," he said. "You ever think about telling them to fuck off?" "Sometimes." Jason tilted his head, studying me. "You should." It was simple advice, but something about the way he said it made my chest tighten. Like he saw through all the layers I'd built to keep people out. I didn't respond, just nodded, sipped my beer. He didn't move. We sat there in silence, knees touching. And I swear, for a moment, I could feel him watching me. Not the way someone looks at a roommate. The way someone looks when they're trying to figure out if they're allowed to want something. Maybe I imagined it, but that night, I didn't sleep. And that was just the beginning. The next few days passed in a weird haze. Jason and I kept doing the normal roommate things, splitting dishes, arguing over thermostat settings, and watching bad action movies while eating way too much Thai takeout. But underneath it all, something had shifted. Or maybe it had always been there and I just stopped pretending not to notice. There were these small moments that kept happening, like how he'd pause a second too long when handing me a beer. Or how he'd lean in close when showing me something on his laptop, his arm brushing mine like it was nothing. And then there was the towel incident. I came home from a coffee run one morning and walked straight into the hallway, right as Jason stepped out of the bathroom, steam trailing behind him. He was in nothing but a low-slung towel, his hair wet, dripping down his neck. I froze, literally stood there like someone had unplugged my brain. "Oh shit," he said, startled. "Didn't hear you come in." "No worries," I managed, backing up like an awkward cartoon character. "You're good," he smirked. "I'm always good." That smug little grin stayed with me the rest of the day. By Friday, I was exhausted. Mentally, emotionally, and honestly, sexually frustrated. In a way I hadn't been since high school. I tried to distract myself. Cleaned the apartment, answered emails, even did laundry, which is my personal rock bottom. Jason got home around 9 p.m., tossed his bag by the door, and asked the most dangerous question of the week. "Want to get a drink?" We ended up at a dive bar a few blocks away. Cheap beers, sticky floors, and a jukebox that only played sad 90s hits. He looked unfairly good in a black hoodie and jeans. I kept telling myself this was normal. Guys have drinks. Roommates hang out. But by the third round, the jokes were coming easier. The space between us on the booth bench had disappeared, and his hand kept casually brushing my thigh like he didn't even notice. "So, you dating anyone?" he asked suddenly, like he was just making conversation. I shook my head. "Nah." "You?" he snorted. "God, no. I think I'm allergic to dating right now." I laughed. "You and me both." There was a pause, a long one. Jason leaned back, drink in hand, and looked at me with this unreadable expression. "You ever notice how dating feels more like proving you're worthy of someone's time instead of just, like, being?" I blinked. That's oddly deep for someone who once said the Fast and Furious franchises. Quote, "Basically Shakespeare," he chuckled. "I'm a man of contradictions." He finished his drink and set it down, then looked at me again. This time with something heavier in his gaze. "You're easy to talk to," he said. "Comfortable." I felt my face heat up. "Thanks." When we got back to the apartment, it was late and I figured we'd just go to bed. I headed toward my room, but Jason paused outside his door. "You want to watch something? Wind down a bit?" "Sure." We ended up on the couch again, something dumb playing in the background, both of us nursing Waters this time. At some point, my head tilted against the back cushion, and his shoulder pressed lightly into mine. The contact stayed. Then he shifted, just slightly, so our legs were touching too. I looked over at him. His face was relaxed, but his jaw was tight, like he was trying not to say something. My heart was thudding in my chest. "You good?" I asked, echoing what he'd said to me earlier that week. Jason didn't answer right away. Then, in a low voice, he said, "Sometimes I think about how different things would be if I'd made other choices." I turned to face him. "What kind of choices?" He stared straight ahead. "I don't know, ones that maybe wouldn't have led to a marriage that tanked, or pretending things didn't matter to me when they did." I didn't know what to say to that. So I said the first honest thing that came to mind. "You don't have to pretend here." His head turned slowly, and our eyes met. Then he did something I'll never forget. He leaned in, slowly, watching me the whole time, like waiting for a sign to stop. But I didn't move. I didn't breathe. And just before his lips touched mine, he whispered, "Tell me to stop." I didn't. The kiss didn't explode. It wasn't some movie moment with orchestral swells or fireworks in the background. It was slow, careful, hesitant even, like neither of us quite believed it was happening. Jason's lips brushed mine and hovered, waiting for something, maybe regret, maybe rejection. I didn't give him either. I leaned in, just enough to close the gap, and when I did, he exhaled softly, like he'd been holding his breath for years. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then he pulled back, barely, our foreheads resting together, his eyes still closed. "I shouldn't have done that," he whispered. I didn't know if he meant it for me or himself. "It's okay," I said. "I don't know why. Because it didn't feel okay, not exactly. It felt massive, confusing, loaded with too many years of unspoken boundaries and assumptions. But it didn't feel wrong." Jason opened his eyes, searching mine. "You sure?" I nodded, even though my heart was a hammer in my chest. And then, just like that, he stood up. "I'm gonna crash," he said, running a hand through his hair. "Long day." I watched him disappear into his room. The soft click of the door, louder than it should have been. The kiss lingered on my lips like an unfinished sentence. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I woke up early, expecting things to be weird. Braced for avoidance, or awkward silence, or maybe even Jason packing his bags and leaving without a word. But he was already in the kitchen when I shuffled out, sipping coffee, scrolling through his phone like nothing had happened. "Morning," he said casually, handing me a mug. "Hope you like strong." "Thanks," I replied, eyeing him. He was wearing his usual hoodie, sleeves pushed up, a fresh stubble shadow on his jaw. He looked normal, like we hadn't kissed on the couch less than 8 hours ago. "So," I said, trying to gauge the vibe, "about last night." Jason didn't look up. "Yeah? Was that?" He set his cup down and finally met my gaze. "Look, I'm not gonna pretend it didn't happen. I kissed you. You didn't stop me. And I'm not gonna make it weird unless you do." I blinked. "Okay, that's refreshingly mature of you." He gave a dry chuckle. "Divorce teaches you some things." There was a beat of silence. "So, was it a one-time thing?" I asked before I could second-guess it. Jason looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head slowly. "I don't know. I'm still figuring things out." "Things like your sexuality?" He didn't flinch. "Yeah, that. And also like what I actually want instead of what I've always been told I should want." I leaned back against the counter, taking a sip of coffee. "That's fair." We didn't talk about it more that morning, but the air between us felt different. Not tense, exactly. Just charged, like everything we said now had a second layer underneath. Over the next few days, we slid back into our routine. Sort of. Except now there were moments. Jason brushing my shoulder in the hallway, lingering looks across the living room, the way he'd sit just a little too close when we watched TV. We weren't touching, not really, but something had shifted. One night I was brushing my teeth when he appeared in the doorway, barefoot, leaning casually against the frame. "Want to watch something?" "Sure," I mumbled around my toothbrush. We settled on the couch again, some forgettable series playing in the background. Our arms touched. He didn't move, neither did I. Halfway through the episode, he spoke. "You're the first guy I've ever kissed," he said softly, like he was saying it to the air more than to me. I turned my head. "Really?" He nodded, eyes still on the screen. "Didn't feel weird." I swallowed. "It didn't feel weird for me either." Jason looked at me then. Really looked. "I think I want to try again." My heart jumped. Okay. And just like that, he kissed me again. This one wasn't hesitant. This one didn't ask for permission. The second kiss was everything the first one wasn't: intentional, confident, and undeniably mutual. It was the kind of kiss that silences your thoughts and makes the rest of the world fall away, like nothing exists beyond the space between two people. Jason's hand found the side of my neck, his thumb brushing my jaw like he was learning the shape of me. I kissed him back fully this time, not tentative or cautious, but with the kind of energy that comes from months, maybe years, of wondering what if. We pulled apart eventually, breaths ragged, and just sat there on the couch, our foreheads touching. "You good?" he asked, voice low. I nodded. "Yeah. You?" He gave a short, nervous laugh. "I don't know. This is new for me." "Me too," I admitted. "At least, this part. With you." Jason leaned back, running a hand through his hair. "I feel like I should be freaking out more." "Why aren't you?" He shrugged. "Because it feels weirdly okay." We didn't sleep together that night, or even cuddle. We just sat close, talked for a bit, and then quietly drifted into our separate rooms. But the energy had changed. The air between us was alive with tension, Not the uncomfortable kind, but the sort that felt like the beginning of something neither of us had the words for yet. The next morning, Jason made coffee and didn't say anything about the kiss. Neither did I. Not because we were avoiding it, but because it didn't feel like something that needed to be immediately dissected. It just was. It existed now, in the shared glances, the subtle smiles, the way his fingers would graze my wrist when he handed me something. And slowly, we began testing the boundaries. A touch on the shoulder, a casual good night that lingered too long in the doorway. One morning, I woke up to find him in the kitchen making pancakes, shirtless, humming to himself. He looked over, saw me staring, and smirked. "What?" he said, flipping a pancake. "Nothing," I replied, trying to act casual. "You're a terrible liar," he said, handing me a plate. Later that afternoon, we sat on the couch again, scrolling through Netflix. His thigh pressed against mine. Neither of us moved. I leaned into him just slightly. He didn't pull away. His arm came up behind me, resting along the back of the couch. That was how it started. Not with anything physical, not with declarations, but with a slow, steady gravity pulling us closer, like the universe had quietly shifted, and we were finally giving in to something that had been simmering just beneath the surface. One night, maybe a week later, we were lying on my bed watching a movie. Jason had his head propped up on his elbow, facing me. I turned toward him. There was no preamble this time. We kissed again, longer, deeper. His hand slipped under the hem of my t-shirt, resting on my hip. Fingers splayed across my skin like he was afraid I might disappear. I broke the kiss and looked at him. "Are you sure?" I asked. Jason nodded. His eyes locked on mine. I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed me again, slower this time, and when his hand slid up my back, I felt myself arch into him without thinking. My skin was on fire. My pulse thundered, but we didn't rush it. That night, we didn't take off all our clothes. We didn't do anything you'd call wild or impulsive. We just touched, kissed, explored, with a kind of reverence I hadn't expected from him. When he finally fell asleep next to me, his chest rising and falling with soft, even breaths, I lay awake for a long time just watching him. I'd never seen him like that, unguarded, peaceful, vulnerable. And that was the night I knew this wasn't casual. This wasn't a fling. This was the start of something real. Waking up next to Jason didn't feel weird. That's what surprised me the most. It should have been awkward, right? The whole my best friend's older brother, my roommate, also maybe kinda my something now situation. But when I opened my eyes and saw him lying there, arm draped over his forehead, breathing slow and easy, there was no panic, no regret, just this warm, quiet certainty. I slipped out of bed carefully, trying not to wake him. He stirred anyway. "Mornin'," he mumbled, his voice gravelly. "Hey," I said, brushing hair from his forehead. He smiled, sleepy and slow. That was nice. "Yeah," I said, heart thudding in my chest. It was. We didn't talk much that morning, just made breakfast together like usual. Jason cracked eggs. I made coffee. At one point, he reached around me to grab something and kissed the back of my neck like it was the most natural thing in the world. That moment stuck with me. He wasn't overthinking it, but I was. Because the question that had been forming in the back of my mind since the first kiss started getting louder. What are we? We didn't call it anything. We weren't hiding, but we weren't saying it either. A few nights later, Matt, his younger brother, my best friend, texted, "Matt, yo, grabbing beers Friday?" I stared at it for a second, then showed it to Jason. "You cool if I go?" "Of course," he said without hesitation. "You want to come?" Jason shook his head. "You go. Have fun. I've got a few work calls to catch up on." "Okay," I said, watching him. He gave me a small smile. "We're good, Ben. Go." That night, I met Matt at our usual bar. The same place we'd been going since college. He was already 2 drinks in by the time I arrived. "Dude," he said, grinning. "Where have you been hiding? I feel like you dropped off the map." "Just working. And, Jason moved in. Things have been kind of busy." He nodded, sipping his drink. "Yeah, How's that going? I hesitated. It's fine. He's different than I remember. Yeah, Matt said, his expression shifting slightly. Divorce will do that. There was a pause. You two getting along okay? He asked, casually enough. I studied him. There was nothing in his tone, no suspicion, but I still felt like I was walking a tightrope. Yeah, I said. Better than expected. He clinked his glass against mine. Good. Honestly, he needed a break. And you've always been good at grounding people. That hit me in the chest harder than I expected. Grounding people. I thought about Jason. How he looked at me in the mornings, how he touched my hand during dinner without thinking about it, how he leaned into me on the couch like it was a habit he didn't want to break. Maybe I was grounding him, but what was he for me? Later that night, when I got back, Jason was still up, lying on the couch in sweats, watching a late-night nature doc. Hey, he said, shifting so I could sit beside him. I didn't. I knelt on the carpet in front of him instead, looking him in the eye. Jason, I said. What is this? He blinked. This? You and me. What are we doing? For the first time, I saw hesitation flicker across his face. I don't know what to call it, he admitted. But I know I like waking up next to you. I like kissing you. I like coming home to this. I waited. And I don't want it to stop, he finished. I exhaled. Okay, that's a start. He reached for my hand. I know I'm a mess, and I don't know if I'm ready for labels, but I'm here, I'm showing up for you. I nodded. That's all I need right now. He pulled me up to the couch and into his arms, my head resting on his chest, his heartbeat steady beneath my ear. We didn't say anything else that night. We didn't have to. It was maybe a week later when things got complicated, not in a dramatic way. Nothing exploded, no screaming matches or broken glasses. Just a shift, a subtle one. The kind that starts with a sentence and ends with a silence that lasts too long. It started with Jason's ex. He got a text one morning. I was in the kitchen making coffee, still in my boxers, when his phone buzzed on the counter. I didn't look, but I heard his voice. Quiet, tired. Yeah, I'm okay. You? A pause. No, I'm not mad, it's just weird, you know? Another pause. No, I don't think it's a good idea. Not right now. I stayed by the sink, pretending I wasn't listening, pretending my chest wasn't slowly constricting with every word. When he hung up, he looked over at me. That was her. I nodded, not trusting my voice. She wanted to talk, see where things stand. Said she missed the house. Us. I stirred my coffee slowly. What did you say? That it wasn't a good idea. Silence stretched between us. But? I finally asked. Jason rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know. It stirred up stuff. Made me think about who I used to be. What I wanted back then. Do you still want that? His eyes met mine. No. But that doesn't mean I don't feel guilty. Guilty about what? Us? He didn't answer. That night he slept on the couch. He didn't say it was because of me, just said he needed space. I didn't push. But I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if we'd crossed some invisible line that was always meant to snap back. The next morning, he was gone. Just a note on the counter. Went upstate for a few days. Need to clear my head. Not running, just breathing. Jay. I stared at it for a long time. The silence in the apartment felt louder than any argument we could have had. For 3 days, I didn't hear from him. Not a text, not a call, nothing. I tried to distract myself, worked late, cleaned everything twice, walked for miles just to get out of the apartment. But everything reminded me of him. His hoodie hanging on the chair, the coffee mug with his initials, a receipt from that taco place he liked shoved into the couch cushion. And then, Friday night, just after 10 p.m., I heard the front door. Jason walked in, looking exhausted, wind-blown, like he hadn't slept in days. He dropped his duffel bag by the door and looked at me. Hi, he said quietly. Hey. We stood there, 10 feet apart, not moving. I'm sorry, he said. You didn't have to disappear. I know. I just needed to figure out if this, he gestured between us, was real or just something I latched onto because I was hurting. I swallowed, heart pounding. And? Jason stepped closer. It's real. Scary as hell, but real. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small rock. Flat, smooth, gray. I found this on a trail. Thought it looked like a heart. Dumb, I know. I took it from him, turning it over in my palm. It didn't look like much, but it meant something now. Jason, I don't need promises. I just need you to stop running. He stepped even closer, barely a breath between us now. I'm tired of running, he whispered. I kissed him then, harder than before. Desperate. Relieved. His arms wrapped around me like they were meant to be there all along. We didn't speak for the rest of the night. We didn't need to. The days that followed were the calmest we'd had. Jason didn't pull away anymore. He didn't sleep on the couch. We didn't avoid things. Mornings started with coffee and half-awake kisses. Evenings ended with low conversations in bed, his hand in mine under the covers, like that small touch anchored us. We didn't label anything. We didn't need to. The only thing we hadn't figured out was Matt. It wasn't that we were hiding, we just weren't announcing. And when your best friend's older brother becomes your something more than roommate, the announcement matters. But timing matters too. It came to a head one Saturday. Matt showed up unannounced with a case of beer and his usual "let's hang" energy. "Benny boy," he yelled, kicking off his shoes. "You got any chips? Or do I need to save this whole night?" I laughed, playing it cool. Jason appeared a second later, looking casual, until he noticed Matt. "Oh," he said, freezing just slightly. "Hey!" Matt gave him a bro hug. "Didn't know you'd be here. Thought you worked weekends now." Jason shrugged, got off early. We all settled in, watched a movie, but I could feel it brewing. The tension. Jason's leg bounced. Mine was stiff. Every time our eyes met, I felt like I was sending Morse code. Don't say anything yet. Then Matt said it. "So, you guys hanging out a lot now, huh?" Jason and I looked at each other. "Yeah," I said. Matt grinned. "Cute. Just don't leave me out of game night. I need people I can actually beat." I laughed. But Jason didn't. His jaw twitched. "I think we should tell him," he said. Matt looked between us, confused. "Tell me what?" Jason turned to him fully. "Ben and I, we're seeing each other." The room went dead quiet. Matt blinked. "Wait, what?" I held my breath. Jason didn't flinch. "You're, like, seeing each other?" "Yeah," I said, sitting up straighter. It just kind of happened. And we didn't know how to bring it up. Matt looked stunned. For a second, I thought he was going to lose it. Then he burst out laughing. "Well, shit," he said. "I knew you two were spending a lot of time together, but damn." "You okay with it?" Jason asked, his voice quieter now. Matt gave a half shrug. "I mean, I guess I should be mad or whatever. Bro code or roommate code or whatever. But honestly, Ben, you're probably the best person he could be with." He looked at me, serious now. "Just don't break him." "I won't," I said, heart in my throat. Matt nodded. "Good. Now pass the chips." That night, after Matt left, Jason pulled me into his arms on the couch. "That went better than expected." "Yeah," I said, resting my head on his chest. "I was ready to flee the country," he chuckled. "You know, I keep thinking about how this all started, that awkward-ass roommate interview. The fart." I groaned. "Don't remind me." He smiled, kissing the top of my head. It's what made me like you. You were real. Unfiltered. Well, I said, at least I'm memorable. He tightened his grip on me. More than that. We sat in silence for a while. Not the kind that's empty, but the kind that feels like home. We didn't plan this. We didn't even see it coming. But we chose it. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like enough. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.